Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro friends. Today we are going to talk about the second half of our discussion yesterday around harassment. And what we're going to address today is what to do if harassment exists in your workplace. Yesterday we spoke about the definitions of harassment, and we spoke about dividing the division of harassment between sexual harassment and other kinds of harassment. And what we identified was that at the core of harassment is unwelcomed behavior. Today I want to delve into what happens if you're on the receiving end of any kind of harassment. How should you deal with that? Well, on one side of things, a really great thing to do is to try and put yourself in a situation where you're less likely to be harassed. First of all, so trying to choose workplaces where leadership is so strong that predators and people who are naturally aggressive just don't fit into the culture of a place like that. And the way to do that is if you're going for interview somewhere, speak openly about what their policy around harassment is and how they actively ensure that the team doesn't get into that kind of ground. So if somebody comes into the workplace, even if it's not an employee, let's say it's a customer, and a customer starts to be quite sexually, weird with the staff, and they just say some unwelcomed comments, or they start to get unnecessarily aggressive with the staff if they don't agree with something that the team has done or said. How do management and how does leadership handle that? There are some workplaces that the customer's always right. Drill deeper with that kind of questioning. What does that mean exactly? What happens if the customer isn't right and they've clearly crossed a line? What ways do they handle that? Going to interview and asking these questions is important because it helps your future potential employer understand that these are issues that are important to you, and it helps signal them that you're somebody that thinks about the quality of the work environment that you have. People who don't want you to care about that kind of stuff simply won't hire you, and that's to your benefit. So if you have an employer or a potential future employer that doesn't care if employees are safe, they will see you as a troublemaker or too hard. They will see you as too hard. You want them to see you as too hard if there's somebody who's creating or not going to any effort to create a safe work environment. You can go too far with that stuff. So if you're somebody who wants to make sure that, I've come across people in workplaces, or I've been told by friends of mine who have been asked by people who have come for interview, if transgender people come into the workplace, I notice you've got a male and a female toilet. What do you do if a transgender person comes in and wants to use the toilet of the gender that they now identify with? And the person, whoever it was that was conducting the interview, in this particular example, had said to them, people can use whatever restroom they want. We only separate them out because that's how they are in the building that we've been given. In a particular situation, the person going for interview in this situation had said, I can only work here if you make the restrooms unisex. And they did not advance to a trial because they were viewed as being too hard. Now, that is a different kind of too hard than somebody who is trying to set the other kind of boundaries that I was talking about in the workplace. So there are different ways, and that's for another podcast, and we will talk about how to address those kinds of issues at some point, but just not today. So I don't want you to think that you can't be seen as being too hard at interview, because you absolutely can. But this particular subject around harassment and asking questions of that nature is not being too hard. You're not being too painful. And if somebody does see you that way, they're giving you an important red flag there, and you should not pursue that position. Because there's a term, power without oversight. So if you walk into an environment where people are asserting power over you and they don't have any oversight by leadership, this is a really, This is a festering ground for predators. If they know there's not going to be any oversight, they are going to assume a power over you because they know that there won't be any oversight. Now, that's a culture that is perfect for predators, whether it be sexual predators or it just be aggressive predators. As somebody who has not been on the receiving end of sexual harassment in the workplace in my coffee career, I was in the corporate career, but the kind of harassment I was subject to in the coffee industry, which happened on a regular basis, was men needing to assert their dominance over me. And sometimes it got physically abusive. I was thrown up against a fridge once. I was challenged to physical fights many times by men. I was talked shit to, I was bullied, I was made fun of, all of that. I didn't have the tools at the time to know how to handle it, and I handled it the best way I thought to handle it. Now I know that I was choosing workplaces that weren't protecting their employees against this. But let's say you've landed yourself in a situation and you have exposed yourself to, you're exposed. You haven't exposed yourself. I misspoke there. You have been exposed to harassment, sexual or otherwise. What should you do about it? The first thing you should do about it is get yourself safe. And the way that you do that is by trying to escape as quickly as possible if it's happening right then and there. There is no rule that says this is how you should do that. If you are feeling threatened at that moment, I would suggest you allow your body to take over, in the sense of allow your natural instincts to kick in, your fight or flight instincts, allow them to kick in and just go with them. Find a way to role play that before things like this happen, so that you can just surrender to that fight or flight instinct and allow your instincts to tell you what to do. Because in the moments that things didn't go right for me, what happened was that I submitted to the other person's dominance and went against my natural urge to fight back or flee. The other thing is, if you see someone standing around and you need their help, call out for it. Don't allow your shame or your confusion about whether this is right, that this should be happening to you or shouldn't be happening to you. If you see someone there and you need their help, call it out straight away. After it happens, go and find the most senior person you can find, tell them what happened, and decide whether you need to do that and have them address the person anonymously or not. You are well within your right to do that. But going to leadership and saying something is going to be imperative to having that person removed or not. And it has to be in your own time. But the sooner you do it, the less likely you are to talk yourself out of it. I'm going to say something here that I might get some backlash for. But this comes from a story that I have heard far too many times from women in coffee. And that is that the women that come to me, and women and men come to me about sexual harassment in coffee, but I haven't heard this version of the story from men. I hear it regularly from women. The statement they say is, if I had have looked for the signs, I could see that it happened to other people. And so what I would suggest is that if this has happened to you, being silent about it is most certainly going to ensure that this is going to happen to somebody else. And that is a ridiculous amount of responsibility to place on you. I understand that, and I think that's why I think I may cop a lot of backlash from this, but I just need to plant the idea there. Recently, we had a situation where I was told about someone who is, and I've spoken about it here on the Daily Coffee Pro, about a known sexual predator in the coffee industry. I'm not going to say what country he's in. And he has done it countless times. I can't do anything about it because I can't get any of the victims to speak up about it. And while it is incredibly frustrating, I have to be respectful of their privacy. And I'm happy to be respectful of their privacy. But it most certainly means that he's going to do it again. And the women who told me their stories were amongst the women who had said to me, other women had let me know in their own way without telling me, just from the little gestures that they did, that this was likely to happen. So for those of you who this is happening to, first of all, I'm so sorry that you've had to go through that. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Somebody asserting dominance and bullying you, whether it be physically, mentally, sexually, emotionally, whatever, it's not okay. You don't have to put up with it. And there is recourse for that. Go and tell somebody. Go and find a way to have this person held accountable. If nothing gets done, find another workplace. That workplace does not deserve to have you there. And it's shit that you should have to change jobs because of somebody else. But if leadership is not taking you seriously, they don't deserve your good work to support the growth of their business. And the best thing that you can do is leave so that you send a signal to them that they don't deserve to have good employees like you. The reason that people assert dominance over other people is because of their own insecurities. People who are insecure don't survive around an environment of secure people. If an employer is not looking after his team or her team or their team and making sure that those people don't exist, you don't belong there. Go and find someone who's going to take care of you. Go and find somebody who is going to have solid boundaries for their team, care about the well-being of their team. That's what you deserve to work in. I would also encourage that if the situation is serious enough and you don't feel that you're getting any support from your employer, go to the police. There are so many situations that I have heard about from the person who was on the receiving end of the abuse that should have been reported to the police. If you happen to be a sexual predator in the coffee industry and you are listening to this, and particularly if you are a sexual predator of men, I have a message for you. You are on notice. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to find a way to help the people in this industry. Get safe. And there are things that are happening that you don't know about already. There are blacklists that already exist in our industry. There are accounts that have been well documented in groups on different platforms with specific names of men in the industry who have done horrific things to women. And the women are too scared to go to the police, but women are not too scared to talk to each other. And so I'm putting you on notice. If we can find a way to make these lists public with the permission of the people who created the lists, in a way that we can have the lists verified by a number of people before they get made public, it'll happen. I don't want people, and I'm very clear on this, I want to make sure that those lists get made public only when we can verify that these actions have actually happened. I'm not an easy person to convince about this stuff. I believe people when they report it, but I can tell someone who's lying. And rarely women lie about this stuff because it's just too embarrassing. And the names that I have seen on these lists have shocked me. But in case you don't know that these lists exist, they do. And if you are somebody who has done horrific things to women, you should consider yourself on notice by the women in the coffee industry. Because the Me Too movement has really ignited a fierceness in women that we haven't quite figured out how to fix the situation yet, but we definitely know that we want to. And we don't get believed when we do report this stuff. And so there will be other ways that women handle it. The best thing that I can suggest is that if you know that you've done something, find a way to stop doing what you do. If you are a predator, go get help and stop it. We need to make our workplaces safer. If you are an employer, go and find out how to create a safe environment for your employees. It's your job. It's part of your job as a ship steerer of the business. Let's look after each other. Let's create really safe environments for each other. And let's just get about the business of creating an amazing coffee experience for ourselves, for each other, and for our customers. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.